Do you still remember what the following terms means? Characteristics of living things, types of living things, fungi and bacteria, properties of materials. Hi, I'm Mr. Long and I'm your science teacher today. In this lesson, we're going to go through the answers from the workbook of diversity from page 43 to page 50. And through going through the questions here, we will be going through a revision of what you have learned under diversity of living things and non-living things. Let's go. Let's begin with page 43. We are to match the main parts of the sailboat to their functions. Remember the terms here. Now, of course, when we are doing corrections in this way through the video, I would like you to also imagine that this lesson is like your classroom lesson. Whatever Mr. Long goes through here on the paper, whatever notes I write here, I would like you to do the same on your workbook or when we're doing worksheet and on your worksheet. Have a green pen in your hand, alright, and watch this video as you do it. If you find that Mr. Long is too fast, just press the pause button, copy down the answer, or rewind and let me play through it again. I'll just keep teaching you until you get it. Okay? Now let's repeat this. Match the main parts of the sailboat to their functions. Now remember, functions mean something? You know what functions mean? Yes, function refers to the uses. So what is the use or what is the function of these different parts? So you know one part of the boat has to catch wind to move the boat along the water. Now which part does serve this function? You're right, that will be the sail. How about carrying people and things? Alright, yes, the body of the boat or the hull carries people and things. Lastly, supports and hold up the sail. So that will be the mast. Let's go to question 5. Now, state the materials your group has chosen and explain your choice. There are actually two questions in this. The first question here asks you to state. And the second question asks you to explain. Now, what do these two terms mean? Now, state is merely to say something. For example, if Mr. Long were to say, state your favorite food, you can say, oh, my favorite food is ice cream. Now, you do not have to write this down because this is my part here that I'm teaching. Alright, so this is just to give an example that you can relate to. Let's go back to this. Let's say the question is state the favorite food of Mr. Long. And let's say Mr. Long say ice cream. That's just one answer to this question. But how about the other one? Alright, the other one say explain. Explain your choice. Okay, so Mr. Long chose this because, so usually explain must come with because. Because he likes sweet and cold foods. So that will be an explanation, because, and he gives a reason to justify his choice. Okay, so take note, state is a question, explain is a different question. Therefore, you see under explanation, you will always see because. Let's take a look. In this case for materials, of course, you don't write these things. We will need to explain using the properties and functions of material. Let me repeat. This part I need to write down. We explain using the properties of the material and using the function of the object. The properties of the materials and the function of the objects or parts of the objects. Let's see. The hull we have chosen. Now, there could be several answers here. Okay, I'll give you just one or two here. We've chosen plastic. Some of you chose wood. Alright, so I have two answers here. You can choose one of these. We have chosen plastic or wood because it is strong and can float on water. So here I've given two properties, strong and can float. Now I need to link these two to their functions. When we talk about the hull of the boat is to carry people and things, alright? And this is a boat and it goes on water. So therefore, why must it be strong? It must be because it is strong and can float on water, so that it does not break when carrying heavy things. So this explanation is for this property. Okay, this function of the hull is addressed by this property. How about this one? Can float on water. And so it does not sink. We want something that floats because we don't want it to sink. Let's try reading this. We have chosen plastic or wood because it is strong and can float on water, so that it does not break when carrying heavy things, and so it does not sink. Now, I have pupils who wrote down stiff. I've accepted stiff if you can justify it by saying that, so when it carries heavy things, the shape of the boat does not change. Okay, now let's go on to the mast. We have chosen, some of you chose metal, some of you chose wood, some of you chose plastic. Now I accept all this if, when I look at your properties and your function, you can explain it properly. We have chosen metal, wood or plastic because it is strong and stiff. Why must it be strong? So that, alright, so that it does not break when it is carrying the sail, and its shape remains unchanged. This part here explains why it's stiff, or you can give I think a better explanation, and it does not bend easily. Okay, I think the second answer is easier for you to understand. Let's try to read this again. We have chosen metal or wood or plastic because it is strong and stiff. Strong so that it does not break when it is carrying the sail, and stiff so that it does not bend easily. Now last part, the sail. We have chosen fabric, and so I wrote down plastic because it is flexible so that it can catch wind. Remember, this part here would be the property, and this part here is the function. And we talk about this many times. If you look above here, the function of the sail is to catch wind. Alright, that's the correction and teaching for this page. Now, what is one common error many of you made in this work as well as in your presentation? First was this part. The question says state the materials. Okay, I underline this. Please underline or highlight this. But many of you, instead, I put a cross, I put down objects. So instead of saying wood, you say chopsticks. Instead of saying plastic, you say bottles. Instead of saying fabric, you say cloth. Okay, cloth is still fine. Or instead of plastic, you say NTUC bag. Now those are objects. They are not materials. There could be many objects that has the same name like a bag, but a bag can be made of different materials. A bag can be made of fabric or plastic, isn't it? So it's not clear enough. So when you ask you to state the materials, state the materials. Okay, now we go on to exercise 5 on page 45. We will not do page 44. Choose the most suitable answer and write its numbers 1, 2, 3 or 4 in the brackets provided. Now, this is an MCQ section, which means there are 4 options. To do such questions, you must always understand the story, and the story is inside here. Okay, let's try to understand this story in the correct way. The table below shows the properties of materials W, X, Y, and Z. W, X, Y, and Z. And I see these 2 words here. I see materials, 4 different materials. I see this. And what are these words? These words are properties. So we need to understand properties. Okay. Next, let's look at the object. The object here is a parachute. Which one of the following materials, W, X, Y, or Z, is suitable for making part A of the parachute shown below? This is part A of the parachute. So the parachute is the object, which is this. Now we talk about 3 important words in our lesson. One is property, one is object, and the third one, do you remember the third one? Let me help you. You're right, that is a function. So what is a function, or what is the use of this object here, this part of the parachute? Of course, this part has to catch wind, alright? Or you can say he has to catch air. So this man can float down slowly as he jumps, after he jumps off an aeroplane or a helicopter or from a high cliff, and he opens up this parachute, this portion here, and he can float down. Now let's think about this material. What kind of properties do you want it to have? Here there are 2. Okay, do you want this part to be strong or weak? Strong, of course. If it's strong, that means that it will not break easily. Because if this breaks easily, then this poor man will and drop to his death. Alright, so we definitely want it to be strong. There are only 2 materials here, W and Z, that has strong. Hooray! Oh, not yet. We do not have our answer yet. Let's take a look at another part. This part needs to be able to catch wind. And for those who do not know, this material can be folded into a very small backpack that fits at the back of his bag when he is carrying it. So when he needs it, he pulls a string that will let this folded part unfurl. When it unfurls, it can catch wind. What was the word I kept using? I used the word fold, bend. So this will give you a clue that this material has to be flexible. And the only flexible material here will be Y and Z. Can we choose Z? Well, we can fold it, but it's not strong. So Z could be something like a piece of tissue paper. You do not want to use tissue paper to make this part of a parachute. Y is something that is strong, it won't break easily, and it's flexible. You can fold it, it can bend, right? It can open up to catch wind. So therefore Y is the best choice. And material Y is here. There's number 3. You write down 3 in the bracket. And if you have the OAS, you will also shade the bubble 3. Next page now. Question 2. Now again, there's a story here. Always understand the story. Read the questions carefully. Write your answers in the spaces provided. Joe had 3 types of paper towel. He wanted to find out which one is the strongest. Underline strongest. Tell me, is this property, object, or material? You're right. This is a property. So Joe wants to find out about the property of his 3 types of paper towel. He placed marbles on each type of paper towel, 1 marble at a time, until they fell through the paper towel. Here, they fell through the paper towel. So we can see that from the picture here, the word here is a big clue to you. Alright, this clue torn is something we have used in our workbook, but we use a different word. We use the word tear. Alright, and it can also mean break. When did we encounter this word? We encountered it in our workbook activities when you would finding out whether aluminum foil or paper is stronger. Which one is stronger? I'm sure you remember doing a certain experiment which looks like this from page 32, testing of strength, which material is stronger, and you were hanging them, and then you put some weights here and you see which material tear first. This is a similar kind of experiment, but they do it differently, right? So this thing here, he wanted to find out, underline this, to find out which one is the strongest, and bracket this part. This whole part unbracketed is known as the aim of the experiment. And you will always see this word at the top of every experiment. The aim to investigate which material is stronger. Next one, for example, aim to compare the properties of different materials. And you will always see this at the top of every experiment because there must be an aim to whatever you're doing. Aim to test for waterproof materials. So in Joe's case, his aim is to find out which material, which paper towel is the strongest. So let's see. How would Joe know which type of paper towel is the strongest from his experiment? Of course, the strongest one would be the one that took the most number of marbles to tear it. Okay, so how would Joe know? The paper towel, alright, paper towel which needed the most number of marbles to tear it is the strongest. Now, if you have a different answer for the correction, please change that to this. Next one. What should Joe do in his experiment to make sure that the paper towel tested is the strongest? Now, we want to know here, the idea here is to make sure. Right, please underline or highlight this to make sure. And you've learned this idea before about making sure. When was it be? Well, if you turn to page 33 of your workbook, you will find out, you will see this question. What could you do to be sure of the results? And the answer there should have been, he should repeat the experiment 3 times or a few times. So what should Joe do in his experiment to make sure? He should repeat his experiment a few times. Okay, next. Study the classification table below. Group A, Group B, Group C. Handkerchief, magazine, key, t-shirt, storybook, paperclip. This is one group. This all seems to be flexible stuff made of fabric. Now, if you're not sure what's a handkerchief, ask your parents, right? Because a lot of you do not use handkerchief these days. Group B, magazine and storybook. This seems to be made of paper, and paper comes from wood. This key and paperclip seems to be made of metal. Now, which of the following may be classified under Group C? So if this is made of metal, it's going to give it all a heading. Put down metal, put down wood, and put down fabric. Now we can match metal materials. Alright, scissors seems to be made of metal. I think this will be a good choice to be placed under Group C. Of course, you can argue, but scissors may have a plastic handle. That's true, but scissors definitely would have a metal blade. Which of the following observations is correctly matched to the characteristics of living things? Let's revise. There are 4 characteristics of living things. Let's see if we can remember all of them. Can you write down here? The first one starts with letter G. Alright, next one is neat. Okay. Alright, what's the first one? Yes, it grows. Living thing can grow. Living thing needs, yes, air. What else? Food. What else? Water. Next one, living thing can respond to changes. Alright, these are 3 very important characteristics of living thing. But there is still another one. I'd like you to pause for a while to see if you can remember. If you do not, please take out your textbook and read it. Can you remember now? It starts RE also. Can reproduce. That's why we learn the different ways different animals, different types of animals reproduce, like laying eggs or giving birth to young alive. All these 4 are the characteristics. Now, some of you may learn elsewhere from your tuition teacher or somewhere that talks about living things die. Now, this is not a characteristic of living thing, right? Because a characteristic means something that living things can do. So living can grow, can take in air, can digest food, can drink water, can run from dangers, can walk towards nice smelling food, can find a mate and reproduce. These are characteristics. This is not a characteristics of living things. Another wrong answer would be can move on its own. This is also not a characteristic of living things because there are non-living things that can move on their own. For example, have you seen those vacuum cleaner, this kind of shape, and you just press the on button and it just move around their house on its own? I think it's called Roomba or something. It seems like a living thing if you say that it can move on its own. So these two are not so useful to talk about living things, where these four will describe living things very well. Okay, now let's take a look. Fish has fins. Doesn't match with this. Living things need air and water. That is wrong. Next one. Earthworm moves away from the light. Living things respond to changes. That is true because it likes the dark place. You can try that with your mealworm beetles, mealworm larva as well. Cover part of it with dark paper and cover the other and leave the other half uncovered and put it under strong light. See if your mealworm larva will move towards the dark place or not. A cow eats grass should be matched with this one. Alright, but here, this is a wrong one. A bird has feathers is a characteristic of birds, but it's not talking about it can grow. This is wrong. So the answer is 2. Which of the following properties of materials is important when making a chair? Now this is an object. Now think about the function of this object. If you have forgotten, please make sure you take notes. Don't just watch and listen. An object has a function. This object's function is to allow people to sit on it without breaking, which is really important, isn't it? And which of this property here describes something that doesn't break easily? Of course, it is strength. Therefore, that's the answer. A chair may be able to float, but I don't need it to float. Alright, a part of a chair could be flexible, but that is not the main function of a chair. There are chairs that are made of clear plastic that allow light to pass through. I've seen it at IKEA before. But that again is not the main function of a chair. So always remember when you see an object, think about its function and then think about the correct property that you should use so that you can allow this function to work properly, to be carried out. Which of the following is a characteristic of most mammals? Right, mammals, 2 pairs of legs, pairs of feelers. This is definitely insects. Pairs of legs, question mark, because there are other living things that could have a pair of legs as well, like birds. They reproduce by laying eggs. No, mammals do not lay eggs. Write down the correct reason here. Mammals actually give birth to young, alive. Right, this will be for mammals. Mammals would have hair on their bodies, that's true. Just like you and I, we are mammals and we have hair on our bodies. So write these 2 groups below, group X, group Y. Let's try giving them a name first. These all look like feathered creatures, so I would call these birds. Whereas here, they all have 6 legs, I will call this insects. Alright, now the animals in X and Y are similar. We're looking for similarity, which means what do they have that makes them similar, or it's not exactly the same but similar. So they have wings and wings. This is true. Hair on their body, that's not true because this has feathers and this has an exoskeleton or hard outer body covering. They reproduce by laying eggs. That is true, they reproduce by laying eggs, although I cannot observe this, but it is true, this reproduce by laying eggs. Their bodies have an outer covering of feathers. This is only true for this group X, but not true for group Y. So this is false. So A and C would be the correct answer for this. We're coming to the end. There's 2 more pages. The diagram shows some items that are classified based on the common characteristic. Common again means something that is similar. Suggest a suitable heading for each group. This seems like all round object. This seems to be rectangular objects. So simply just put down round objects and rectangular objects. Now study the diagrams below. So sorry, let's go back to this. So why is this question important? Because in the topic of diversity, you learn the important skill of classifying different things, different living things and non-living things by their observable characteristics, by their properties. So here, you will notice that shape is also something you can use to classify objects. Study the diagrams below. So this, I'm not sure what it is, but there is a text here that tells me it's a mold, and mold I know is a fungi. This is a mushroom. Mushroom is a fungi. So which group of living things, do mold and mushroom belong to? So this would be the fungi family. Now group refers not to individual specific animals or living things, but group. For example, mammals is a group. For example, insects is a group. Bacteria is a group. And each group of these living things have their own unique characteristics. There are others like fish, there are amphibians, there are reptiles, there are birds. And if you think Ms. Long has missed anything, please add it in. Alright, add it in if you think I missed any answer here. Now what is the similarity between mold and mushroom? Now many of you like to say they are both fungi. Now that tells you that in the same group. But similarity here is always talking about their characteristics. Okay, I repeat. When you ask for similarity between different organisms like this, it's always looking at their characteristics. So in this case here, both of them, what could be their characteristic? They are similar. You can see that they reproduce by spores. That's how they are similar. Don't say they are fungi, don't say they are both living things, then all living things are similar because they are living. That is not a very useful way of describing and comparing different organisms. Now the last page now. Now this is a very good question because this question tests whether can you read pictures. Alright, I repeat, can you read pictures? Pictures are always given as important clues to help you to understand. A strip of material A and material B of the same size. We want it to be same because we want it to be a fair test. Are placed across 2 tables. You notice this distance is also the same. Write this down. Same distance. And a weight is first placed on material A and then on material B. So a weight, this is only one weight. So in other words, these 2 weights are the same weight. First, this person put a weight on material A, observe what happened, then removed it and placed it on material B and observed what happened. Now this question doesn't have any words to tell you the property. Words such as torn. Alright, if there are such words like torn, that will help you to answer this much easier. For example, in this question, when you say torn, this will give us a clue. It is about strength. But here there isn't. So here you got to learn how to read pictures. Now many of you talk about strength here, which is wrong. Because if it's about strength, then something should be breaking or tearing. And both materials did not break. However, if you observe, this material actually bends more. This material only bends a little, which means this is about flexibility. this experiment is about flexibility. So what can we conclude from this experiment? Now remember, conclusion is always an answer to the aim. And the aim now, therefore, after reading the picture correctly, we know that the aim is to find out which material is the more flexible one. Which one is the more flexible material? So we can conclude something. We can conclude that material A is more flexible than material B. Now, in this question, this is what we call a comparison question. Therefore, in your answer, you must have words that help you to compare. More flexible than is a comparison. Alright? You cannot just talk about A is flexible. Well, B is flexible too. It's just less flexible than A. So whenever there are two or more objects in an experiment, almost 100% of the time, you're required to make comparison. Just remember this. Last question. Water is poured onto two identical ramps covered with materials A and B. Water runs down material A. Water runs down material B. There are some words that help you. Alright, you notice it is darkened. Alright, and you say water is absorbed by material B. But here, the water wasn't absorbed, it just runs down and it pulls up all over here. This tells you which material is absorbent. Yes, B. And which material does not absorb water? Yes, that's A. So A does not absorb water. So what property is this? This tells you it is waterproof. Water cannot be absorbed at all by material A. So therefore, which material is suitable for making an umbrella? This is an object. Now let's remember the function of this object. The function of the object is to keep us dry during rainy weather. Alright? So the umbrella must be able to stop the rain from reaching the person underneath it. Must just stop the person from getting wet. Therefore, this material has to be waterproof. If this material is B, oh dear, water will get absorbed into the umbrella and it start to drip onto the person's head. We cannot have B. Therefore, it must be A. So how do we explain this? What I told you before is we have to explain using the properties and function. Remember, whenever you talk about things like explaining the choice of materials, explaining the materials or the objects that we choose, we must explain using properties and functions. Properties and functions. So let's try this. A. There are two questions here. The first one is which material, A or B? A, full stop. Why would you choose that material? Why is an explain kind of question. So why would you choose A? Because, remember we said that anything with explanation, we got to write down because. So A, because it is waterproof. Good, we have the property. But I'm missing something. I'm missing the part on linking it to the function of the object. So it's waterproof so that it can keep me dry in the rain. So remember, there are two parts to this kind of answer. Talk about the property and talk about the function. This is the property and this is the function. If you can explain this way, you can be assured you will do very well for such questions. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and finish your corrections. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.